Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Fostering a More Inclusive Workplace with Immersive Learning. My name is Charlie Trier. I'm the content marketing lead here at Striver, and I'm going to introduce our special speaker for today, April Candell, in just a moment. But first, just a couple of housekeeping things. We are running this webinar with the ability to do Q&A. So if you do have questions throughout the webinar, please enter them into the Q&A box and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. We should go about 20 to 25 minutes depending on questions. So that's about how long we'll be today, and hopefully that fits very nicely into your work schedule for the day. Before we bring in April, I just want to quickly go into what our agenda is for today's webinar. So first, we'll just do a very brief intro to Striver, and then I'll turn it over to April to talk a little bit about what immersive learning is and how it fits into DE&I and into your DE&I strategy a little more broadly. And then she'll talk a little bit about inclusive conversations, and that's really where we're seeing the power of immersive learning coming to life. And then, as I mentioned, we'll do the Q&A. So first, very quickly, just a brief intro to Striver so you can get an understanding of why we're even here and why we're talking about this. So Striver is an immersive learning company. We were founded at Stanford University in the Stanford Virtual Human Interaction Lab. And that's where our founders, Jeremy Bailenson, who's one of the world-leading VR experts in the world and a professor at Stanford, worked with our CEO, Derek Belch, to find a way to actually train football players to get the mental repetitions that they need when they're not on the field. So that's how they pretty much started. Derek was a football coach, and they started by giving football players these mental reps and very quickly expanded into the enterprise space, seeing the power of VR, seeing the power of immersive learning for lots and lots of different enterprise use cases. So starting with Walmart, we began training employees in how to do their jobs better, make them feel like they're really in the situations that they're going to face in the workplace. And today, Striver's immersive learning platform has trained over 1 million employees in the enterprise space across a variety of different use cases, right? So not just in the inclusive conversation space, but also in customer service, in operations, and in a variety of other soft skills that help to continuously grow employees and continuously develop the workforce. So that's a little bit about Striver. I mentioned immersive learning a little bit, and here's where I'm going to bring in April. So April Candell is a program manager, a senior program manager, working on strategic accounts, and I think she can tell you a little bit more about her role and some of the things that she does. But welcome, April. Thanks for joining us, and I'll pass it over to you to go into the meat of our webinar.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Charlie. So yeah, as Charlie mentioned, I'm a senior program manager at Striver, which means I am an internal business partner to our enterprise customers to help build strategies that they can employ in their company. So that starts with looking at business and learning objectives across their organization and figuring out ways to fit it into the initiatives that they have going on and make sure that it has a meaningful impact when they bring immersive learning into their world. And so we've talked a little bit about Striver and immersive learning. So I want to jump in now to give a better sense of what we're talking about when we say immersive learning. So VR is very cool, but it's not just about plopping cool content into a headset and sending you on your way, right? So immersive learning is what we refer to when we think about where virtual reality and advanced learning theory intersect, right? So it's that flight simulator situation where you're learning in the environment that you're expected to employ skills. So we take different circumstances that all of our learners will encounter, and we bring the learning into a space that they're familiar with. So the thing that we like to refer to when we think about immersive learning is presence, right? So how present does someone feel when they're in the space? And the more immersed in an environment and the more recognizable it is, the better decision making we can see as they're going through the experiences, and the better indication that we will have of how they will behave in real life. So again, when we're going through the presentation and we start bringing it up, it's not just a cool new technology, but really how do we make it resonate with the populations that we're bringing it to. So the benefits of learning in virtual reality and immersive learning particularly are endless, but when we think specifically about soft skills, there's a lot to be gained by taking your content into an immersive environment. So first and foremost, when we're thinking about soft skills, we want to think about creating a safe place for learners to learn and practice the skills that they need to employ. So especially with soft skills, things can be a little bit emotional, a little bit uncomfortable. And so this gives learners the opportunity to make mistakes and not have fear of trying out new things and seeing the impact of the decisions that they're making. But not only that, we're engaging them in a way that's more impactful from a physicality standpoint, right? So we're transporting them into a circumstance that will look familiar to when they need to employ these skills. And we feel that this is a great way of giving them that opportunity to go through the motions and understand the implications far more than traditional training methods like role playing or e-learning even, because they're truly immersed and physically in the space. One of the really brilliant things about soft skills in VR, and head and shoulders a big differentiator between us and traditional training methods, is that opportunity for self-reflection. So our tool allows you to go through the trainings and then play back those experiences so that you can see and assess how you've performed. A lot of times when we leave these trainings, we're wondering, oh, did I say the right thing? I felt a little uncomfortable. Did I seem uncomfortable? And so this gives you the real chance of playing that back and saying, oh, okay, that was far more natural, or I can improve in certain areas depending on how they're seeing themselves. So this is a great opportunity with some of these more difficult conversations for people to go back and see, how do I look to the other person that's engaging with me? One of the great things about VR also is this ability to bring the same training in a consistent manner to all of our learners, and to do that with repeatability, right? So having the opportunity to put on a headset, go through the learning, no matter who you are or where you are, or however many times you want to go through it, it's there and it's consistent, and we know that everybody is able to access the same learnings and take with them the same lessons as they continue throughout their workplace. And certainly not least, of course, is the unique and actionable data that we can get from this technology. So with e-learning and other traditional forms of training, we're able to see a certain amount of data and analytics as it relates to performance or people who have participated. But this elevates our ability to see and glean insights about how people are behaving because of the physicality of the medium, right? So we're able to determine how people are spending their time, where they're paying attention, and all of those types of things, which can layer on and make a really robust story. So as we're continuing on our journey, our DEI journey, and other training journeys, how can we continue to improve and build on what we're seeing and trends across the organization, so that we're continuing to give people and meet people where they are and give them more to think about as they're moving forward. Which is quite a lot, right? But where does it fit into the DE&I strategy? So as an organization and in your role, there are a lot of things to account for from a DEI standpoint, right? There are hiring practices, corporate policies, there's culture building. And so training, and particularly immersive learning, is just a component of that. And it should be in concert with all of the other things that you're doing. But really where it fits in is bringing the practicality of applying all of those things to the learner, so that they're able to act in such a way that resonates with those other policies and procedures. So it meets people where they are, both in their roles, but also where you are in your journey as an organization. And it gives them the ability to connect the dots and try and practice some of the foundational things that you've set forward and some of the other interventions that you may be doing. So it's not about scrutinizing behavior. It's not about, oh, let me see who doesn't understand or who isn't behaving the way that I hope. It's really about giving this opportunity and giving the guidance once you have those things in place to say, okay, now that you understand all of these things, or, you know, we've set you into motion, take some time, take some space, and really figure out how to apply these in your own personal role. So I'll get a little deeper. Here's an overall framework for how to foster an inclusive workplace, right? So we're thinking about all the steps that you need to take within an organization so that your employees feel more comfortable having a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive place. So we would, of course, hope that they become more aware and that they can identify some behaviors that could be potentially problematic or more inclusive. They're given opportunities to think through how to make decisions. And where we really will shine, right, is at the bottom of this list, giving them the opportunity to demonstrate the proper action and reaction when, unfortunately, these things arise. So we're not going to assume that changing the hearts and minds of the employees is something that's achievable today. So it's really about, what do we do when these circumstances arise, and do we have the right skills to respond when they do, so that we can continue on in the workplace in a productive manner, and so that everybody feels safe and everybody feels like they can come to work as their authentic selves. So when we think through immersive learning and inclusive conversations, we wanted to create this experience where you can traverse different roles in an inclusive conversation and practice the skills that you would need in order to navigate those circumstances. So, for example, we'll start off by putting learners in a bystander perspective. So this is when you're in that third party, you're observing two colleagues who are having a conversation, and perhaps you see something that doesn't resonate with you or one of them, and you need to choose how to respond within that circumstance. So we're giving them that opportunity of taking a step back and seeing a scene play out and how exactly to respond to it. So this gives them an opportunity, again, to step in a way that may feel uncomfortable in a role-playing scenario and certainly in real life, but have that opportunity without fear of repercussion of trying to apply some of the skills that we'd like them to take forward into the real world. The other roles that we can think through are, what do you do if you're an initiator of a microaggression or some sort of non-inclusive behavior, and somebody comes to you and gives you the feedback that perhaps something you've said has crossed the line? Or even more impactful, what if you're the subject of something like that, right? So we're changing around the circumstances and giving everyone the opportunity to kind of internalize how it feels to be in each of these roles and give them that opportunity to respond in kind. So ideally, they'll have those mental repetitions that Charlie was alluding to in the beginning, right, of going through these scenarios and knowing how to respond in a way that feels more natural because they've done it before, because they've been in an immersed environment that gives them the opportunity to practice beforehand. So again, depending on the environment and depending on the role, some people might experience these more than others, but we think this is a great opportunity to democratize that and let everybody know how to respond, so that if they do end up in the circumstance, which unfortunately chances are that at some point in their career they will know how to continue and proceed in a way that is inclusive to the others around them. So when we dig into the weeds of how we expect this to happen, we want to focus on key skills that we want the learners to flex throughout the experience. So first and foremost is communication, right? So understanding how to receive and give feedback with grace. Listening and asking follow-up questions so that they can better articulate how how they're understanding the environment to be, and how they're understanding their peers to be expressing themselves. So we want to spend a lot of time and give them a lot of stimuli so that they have the ability to demonstrate that they have good communication that would foster an inclusive environment. The next is situational awareness. Now, this seems like it might be pretty straightforward, but obviously it's a very strong point for the medium, right? It's giving them the ability to look around the space to see how their peers are conducting themselves and holding their body language. It gives them the ability to observe some of the nonverbal cues and respond in kind. So reacting as an observer, understanding how you are as the subject, and using that awareness to better approach a situation, which is not always something that you can take, just somebody's verbal behavior for. And also understanding how to maximize the space and navigate a space to better suit a conversation when it seems like maybe it can escalate. And then the last one is initiative, right? So demonstrating that they, if and when they want to take initiative. So they can intervene if they feel like it's necessary. They can object, or they can start to show more of this natural ability to step in or sense out a circumstance and respond in kind. So giving them the opportunity to say, hey, this doesn't seem okay to me, or I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to de-escalate in another way. But giving them that opportunity to demonstrate when they think it's an appropriate time and when they think that maybe they should try a different route. So again, this is something that is above and beyond what we can see in other mediums, and also give them the ability to test the waters and see when it is a good time to speak up, given all of the other things that they've taken in from the environment. So we think the combination of these three skills particularly is a good way to start in understanding where your employees are in terms of being able to foster an inclusive environment. The ultimate goal, of course, is to give them the ability to feel heard and to be heard in these spaces. So giving them the tools to navigate that, especially now, in a way that they're not feeling like they're stepping out of line, or that they're going to have to go against the grain in order to feel comfortable as their authentic self. So to sum it up, I think there are some key takeaways that we can think through as we're embarking on this journey of bringing training in the DEI space, but also immersive learning, right? So in general, having an opportunity to practice these skills in an authentic way that feels real and feels approachable is an amazing way to round out a comprehensive DEI strategy, right? So giving them the tools and giving them the opportunity to apply those tools, and then also having the opportunity to reflect on how they were behaving, or how they have engaged with other colleagues within that immersive space, is going to make a real impact as we're kind of figuring out how to further these conversations within the organization. And I think the last thing, of course, is thinking through the insights that we'll be able to glean from the exercise itself. So giving yourself the opportunity to look at the aggregate trend and say, okay, where can we go from here to continue to better our organization and to continue to enhance the experience of our employees, so that way, as we're continuing, we're meeting them where they are, instead of doing our regular box ticking exercises that may leave people wanting more, or leave people without that ability to level up. So when we think through all of this, it's really that holistic perspective of practicing self-reflection on an individual level, and then on the grander scale, how does this help drive the organization forward? So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Charlie.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for all that information. Really, really powerful. And I think a lot of the things that you said hopefully will resonate, right, around using this skills-based approach to DEI and to providing people with that practice. And that's one of the things we talk about all the time here at Striver, is just that ability to practice and those mental reps, the physical reps, and the emotional reps, especially in this case, to do some of the things that need to be done, particularly around having an inclusive conversation. So we've got some really good questions here. And I think most of these, April, I'm gonna go back to some of the experiences that you were talking about a little bit. And I wanna ask specifically around taking initiative. So that was one of the things that that you mentioned for the skills that we're building. And somebody asked something around, what if taking initiative isn't the right thing to do? How are we handling that kind of a scenario, and what's, how do we handle that if taking initiative isn't the right thing, when we were kind of talking about if it is the right thing?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So one of the benefits of our software is that we have the ability to do what's called branching. So within our experience, we have these moments, these decision-making moments, right, where you can start to assert yourself or not, and our tool will allow you to see the repercussions of that decision. So if they start to take initiative and maybe it's not the appropriate time, the tool will give you the corresponding feedback to say, hey, maybe now isn't the time, and give some indication of, looking back, did you read the body language? Have you taken into consideration some of the communication that has come through, and give some more of that guidance of, okay, good on you for trying, but perhaps there's another and a better way. And similarly, right, if somebody takes a step back and maybe they should intervene, having our environment give the cues, either by some of your colleagues saying, hey, you didn't speak up for me, or I was expecting this from you, and getting that feedback in a really naturalistic way, that will help guide them in a real scenario.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really helpful and really impactful way to think about that. So, and it also, I think, brings up another point, and this is something that you and I have talked about, which is this idea of the rules of engagement. And I think that was something interesting that you had said before, and maybe that was something you could just kind of expand on around how we view inclusive conversations in immersive learning as kind of setting the rules of engagement.
Absolutely. So in the beginning of our experience, and also just in the beginning of any DE&I initiative, we really need to level set with all of our colleagues and peers and coworkers that we try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that they're conducting themselves in a way that they feel like is appropriate and conducive to the workplace. And so we want to level set there and say, try and come to the table being solutions minded and being inclusive minded, and realize that, these things are going to happen, that these shortcomings will occur. And so rather than go through and try and pick out, this is not an inclusive behavior and this is, acknowledging that, unfortunately these things do happen, and rather than fixating on that, empowering people to really speak up when they feel like they've witnessed something, or they've experienced something, or even if they've done something that they feel is not totally productive in that environment. So I think when we embark on this experience, we want people to kind of have that mindset of, don't worry if you've messed up. Really worry more about what are you going to do with that, and how can you rectify the situation so that your colleagues and peers can feel like they can be themselves, and like you can be yourself as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it harkens back to some of the research and deep dives that we've done as we explored this space and started to figure out, okay, where does Striver and where does immersive learning really belong, especially in the near term, that unlearning behaviors and our colleague, Michael Casale, who's the chief science officer, wrote a nice article about how unlearning behaviors has actually proven to be very, very challenging, and that there's a lot of different mechanisms you need to put in place, and it takes a lot of significant time. But that if you're able to kind of substitute that process with a way to be able to handle and get the skills to, practice how you handle those situations when they do occur, that's a really, really nice path to creating a more open and inclusive work environment. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing in a lot of the things that you're saying. So did you have anything else to add before we move into the kind of the last part of the webinar?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would add to that, Charlie, is that unfortunately, there's no way of understanding where everybody is starting, within this space. We all come from different backgrounds and we've had different experiences, and there is no monolith, right, in any group or any population. So it's tough to have the expectations going into this of where people should be or shouldn't be. And so we don't want to spend a lot of time penalizing people for that. I think instead, if we can start to set the bar of this is the expectation of how you behave, and these are the skills you need to participate in these environments, then we can feel more comfortable moving forward. And I think having the opportunity to give and receive feedback in a way that feels meaningful, feels familiar, but also feels safe is one of the ways that we can start to build that repertoire, so that we're not setting our expectations too high or approaching any situation thinking that somebody should know more or better.
Yeah, definitely. And so thanks for putting a bow on that. And I think hopefully the audience will tend to agree and think that this is a really powerful way that they can start to make some inroads. So as we begin to wrap up the webinar, I just want to call attention to an ebook. If you want to go a little bit deeper into the inclusive conversations in immersive learning, we have an ebook around creating an inclusive workplace and framework. We go a little bit deeper into the framework that April talked about, as well as some of the experiences and some of the skills that you'll be learning and how those are really coming to life, as well as a little bit more into the science of VR and why it makes your brain really feel like you're in that situation. If you have specific questions around inclusive conversations or want to learn more about how to get started, please reach out to us at info@striver.com. And we have a variety of other resources that you can view and take a look at on our website. So highly recommend doing that. So as we wrap up, April, I just want to say thanks so much. That was really informational and really helpful. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks for joining the webinar, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye.